What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro vs. Pro. I'm Alex Blickle, joined by fellow professional golfer Justin Bates. Great show coming up for you guys. PGA Championship recap, some course fit stuff for Colonial. Two of my favorite outright bets in a long, long time. Really excited for this one. How you doing, Justin?
Good, man. Good. I just saw one of my good friends just missed by one at U.S. Open sectionals. Guy that I traveled with in Canada forever. So kind of the same path as me. Played and then came home, had a family, got his amateur status back, but he's playing really good golf. Yeah, unfortunate. He just texted me. But, dude, I'm looking forward to it. We finally get a good golf course here in the DFW area, one that I like much better than that dump they played a couple weeks ago. So I'm pretty excited, too. I hope that they can get it to the same test it was, in previous years, and it doesn't get too soft. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I maybe have a little bit differing thoughts on the fit, so that'll be a really interesting discussion. But before we get there, we've got to start with the Cinderella story. Yes, everybody's already talking about Michael Block. Everyone's already covered it, but we've got to have our conversation too. The way I want to take this, though, is let's try and contextualize this. Like, how big of an upset of an underdog story was this?
I mean, I don't think that if you want to go down the road of people understanding how hard it is first to qualify, to get, through just into the PGA Professionals Championship, and then they have to finish in the top 20 to get here and then to do this. That being said, I saw he's got like 27 starts in PGA Tour sanctioned events. So it's not like he was the most out of nowhere player. I think he must have a pretty good job where he gets to play with the members a lot and that kind of deal might be part of it. But regardless, just to see him in contention, then to see the people rallying around him and to listen to his story, and then take it even a step further than that of just how appreciative he was. And then the way the PGA, I think the PGA lacks a little bit of the luster as far as either the US Open, British Open, or the Masters as far as the majors. And I think that kind of helped the PGA Championship in general draw a few more eyes. Not that it needed a lot more eyes this year with the LIV versus PGA stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. But man, I was trying to think about like a good comparison between what he just did and underdog stories in other sports. And the best that I could come up with is a 16 seed beating a 1 seed in March Madness. But I feel like that's even more likely than what we just saw.
Especially nowadays. I think it'd be more like a 16 seed beating a 1 seed 15 years ago, right? I think that we're going to get more 16 over 1s. With all the dumb NCAA rules there are now and the transfer portals and everything going sideways all the time. But yeah, I like 15 years ago, like that's the other thing that we hear about a lot, but like everybody wants to argue about like Alabama's best football year, right? Playing the worst team in the NFL. Like, like that would be a similar thing, right? It's almost impossible. So yeah, it was really impressive. And not just – I always think of something like this that happens where the guy is kind of like lurking in like 50th and then shoots 8 under the last day and backdoors the top 10. I don't think people realize how much harder it is to be around that top 10 all week and then just continue to grind it out and stay there.
That's exactly why I thought it was so impressive. I think a really good – comparison would be like a 16 seed beating a 1 seed in a 5-game series or a 7-game series, because the way he sustained that was just incredible. 4 days of playing at that level. The Data Golf estimated that he gained 2.5 true strokes per round. There are PGA Tour pros who haven't had that level of an event all season that we consider to be good players. That was an unbelievable performance. But speaking of unbelievable performances, Koepka was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mentioned the fact on Twitter he gained over a stroke per round in all 4 strokes gain categories. Can't remember the last time I saw anybody do that. To do that in the PGA Championship, he was almost at 5 true strokes per round. I don't think I've ever seen that. Like, this was a historically good performance, and because of the block story, like, I don't think Koepka has really gotten his dues yet for how good he was too.
I mean, how fun he was to watch and the shots he was hitting and stuff, like, it was just amazing to me. And once again, he was not, I wouldn't say he wasn't in contention, but he had to shoot. I think he shot 4 under on Saturday to get to that final group. And I think you got to see in that final pairing and those final couple pairings, maybe not just how good Koepka is, but the killer instinct of Koepka compared to some of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if it's there for him, he's got that I'm going to take over and whip everybody's attitude. And sometimes when a golf course is that hard, that's what you need.
I was really surprised to hear him talk about how he went into the final round of the Masters with a very conservative mindset. He was going to play conservatively. And knowing that it was Jon Rahm who he was up against, it was really surprising to hear that. But to his credit, like, he basically said, I'm not ever taking that type of mindset again. I'm going to be super aggressive. To back up that talk with the way that he played, making a handful of birdies early, closing it out with birdies, unbelievable performance. I mean, he was what every golfer wants to be in that type of pressure.
For sure. And like you said, the fact that he's willing to learn from his mistakes, like, how good – we're talking about a guy that's not exactly been on the traditional path to be this good this young. Mm-hmm. I mean, he couldn't even make the team at Florida, I think. It was something like that. Played Challenge Tour. And I don't know if anybody that's listening understands how hard Challenge Tour is to play. Yeah. But imagine playing the Korn Ferry Tour with less money, twice the travel, nowhere to stay, like, not very good golf courses. Like, it is the epitome of true grinding it out. Don't get me wrong. I would love to do it. I think it would be a blast. But in generally speaking, like, it's a really, really difficult path to take. And to be now, I mean, who's going to argue with him? I mean, you have to put him in your top 5 in the world, but not just that, like, how good he is in pressure situations in big golf tournaments. Do it once, fine. Do it twice. All right. Maybe he has a little knack for it. But now at this point, are we just going to say that maybe he can make himself that good when he's ready?
It's insane how much better he has been throughout his entire career in majors. Because I think what it really speaks to is that he's as good as he is because he's dominant mentally. And we just talked about, like, the fact that he was able to learn from that mistake, immediately correct it, and not just, like, improve on it, but full on just perfection on Sunday to close it out. And it doesn't make sense that someone that talented could consistently underwhelm outside of majors, but it really just says that he's as good as he is because when he locks in, he beats everybody else between the ears and nowhere else. And it's something that, like, I don't think we'll ever be able to completely understand or comprehend. It's not natural for someone to be that much better in the most important situations.
So in that case, can DraftKings make his price high enough for the US Open?
This is a really tough one because I think the way that I am considering it for the next major is, number one, we'll wait and see what the price and the ownership are. But I think that I've made, like, a mental note to myself that when it comes time to build lineups for the US Open, I don't want to use somebody else when I could be using Koepka. If I'm fading Koepka, it's because he's too expensive and I want to build a more balanced lineup. But I don't want to pivot off of him. He is the highest probability bet to be in contention, I think, in a major. And that's what we should be, chasing in our lineups.
And it's kind of the way that I feel. Like, I'm kind of the same way about not the same as far as building the lineups, but I have the same feeling about Scheffler in every event. It just seems like he doesn't have the killer instinct to go take it, but he's going to go play damn good every week. And if that's good enough to win, he's going to win. If not, he's going to finish 3rd or 5th, or, the different golf courses, the different types of golf, doesn't matter.
It's funny you bring up Scheffler because my biggest takeaway from Koepka in the PGA Championship was he basically had Scheffler's ball striking dominance with Cam Smith's on and around the green dominance. That combination is going to win you the major far more often than not.
No doubt. But yeah, I just like it's going to be interesting. I'm not, I'll wait and see pricing wise, but I just don't know. I don't think that DraftKings can come up with a price high enough to where he'll still be somewhat owned, but it'll be low, right? Unless they just completely mark him out of the picture.
Is there an ownership? Like, let's say he's 10-5. They only move his price a little bit. He's still, well below Scheffler, Rahm, maybe even Rory. Is there an ownership that he could get to where you would say, you know what, at this point, it's not a good bet. I'm either going to fade him by going all the way down, or I'll even pivot. Like, let's say he and Rory are the same price. Koepka's going to be 25%, Rory's going to be 10%. Does that make you go to Rory, or are you just saying, you know what, Koepka's going to be there, I'm going to use him?
If I'm playing a max entry, I'm pivoting off of him at anything over probably 15%. Single entry, if he fits, I'm going to play him because I can handle 25% Koepka in a single entry.
Let's move on to some Colonial course fit, because even though this is a non-elevated event, I think it's going to be a really, really fun one. I love this course fit model. It's a 9 out of 10 on the predictive and reliability scale. And it's a really, really unique model too, where we're now pivoting to a course kind of almost not necessarily the opposite of what we just saw, but at least from the importance of distance, I believe it is the opposite from what we just saw, where distance here at Colonial just doesn't create an advantage. There's an added emphasis on accuracy off the tee, on putting, and then a little bit extra on both iron play and around the green play, completely at the expense of distance. Distance was completely unpredictable in the course fit model. I'm curious to hear your thoughts here, because it sounds like you maybe disagree with the lack of importance of distance.
Well, so I've been able to play this place quite a bit, probably the most outside of Craig Ranch, probably the most I've played any tour stop, of the year. So there's a lot of like sneaky places where if you can fly your ball in the 285 to 290 range, you can go from 8 irons, to flip wedges, sand wedges type of spots. So I think that the distance is so far down because there are a lot of holes where everybody hits it to the same spot, right? Whether you're hitting a 4 iron, a 2 iron, a hybrid, a 3-wood, or a driver, everybody is kind of hitting it in the same exact spot on a lot of holes. But there's like 3 or 4 holes that if you can, now you don't have to hit it Cameron Champ far. You don't have to, but you just can't be in that. I think this is why you've seen Spieth have so much success here, because of everything that you said. Plus, if he wants to, he can fly it, in that 290 range. So he can hit it over some of those cross bunkers. Like I said, I can think of 3 or 4 right off the top of my head, but I can also think of a few, like there are some holes that number 5, dude, I'm telling you, it's one of the tightest golf holes. When the rough's up, it's one of the tightest golf holes you'll ever play. I mean, there's just nowhere to hit it. And all the drivers now are such low spin. It's hard to hit a spinny cut that stops in the fairway. Like there's just some really hard golf holes. And the other thing is the par 3s are all really difficult. They can make the pins difficult. Their sand is got to be the best in the world. Like, the last time I played there, I hit in 8 bunkers on the front 9 and shot even par. Like it's perfect. So, there's some element of, does that take a little bit of the skill of like bunker play out of it, because their sand is just so easy to play from, so easy to judge. But like when I think of this golf course, I think of Tommy Fleetwood. Like he is the first person that just pops to my head of who should play good. He's got some decent form, but this golf course is just right up his alley.
I was about to ask you who stands out to you at any price range. So we've got that first answer from you. I'm going to go to 2 guys. I think Russell Henley and Sung Jae Im both really pop off the page. Both super accurate off the tee. maybe behind their counterparts from a distance perspective. And then with Henley, the iron play and the short game have been phenomenal. And with Sung Jae, we know like the rest of his game throughout his bag, just so solid all around. So I think those two really stand out. I'm not sure what my closing thoughts are going to be on Sung Jae, but Henley is my first outright 40-1, and I have him in an each way bet, 40-1 each way. So 1 unit on the outright, 1 unit on the placements. And this is one of my favorite bets of the year because I think, first of all, I don't think people realize how good he's been. I mean, he has rattled off some spectacular finishes in his last 5 events. I'm going to bring these up because I think the most notable thing is that his run of success completely coincides with the courses that don't require distance off the tee. He was phenomenal at the Players, where driving accuracy and around the green play kind of reigned supreme in that course fit model. Goes to the match play, didn't advance, but played extremely well. Data Golf estimated that he was gaining over 3 true strokes per round, which is like a top 10 in a major level of play. He just ran into some buzzsaws in his group. Top 5 at the Masters, where he was once again dominant with the putter, by the way. So 2 straight rounds where he takes his biggest weakness on the greens, and then the match play and at the Masters, he rolled the rock extremely well. Short game was there throughout. Then gets another top 20 at the Heritage, another course where you don't really need accuracy. Irons were spectacular again. And then he missed the cut at the PGA Championship, where you do get rewarded for distance quite a bit. Putted terribly, but the iron play was sensational again, gained about 1.5 strokes per round with those irons on Thursday and Friday. So he's coming in phenomenal form. He hasn't played a lot, so I think he's coming in under the radar. I believe he should be more like 25, 27, 28-1. 40-1 is a fantastic number as is. Then you also get the placements in the each way. Becomes one of my favorite bets of the year.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot to argue there because I do think that you're getting somebody that is kind of flying out under the radar for sure. DFS wise, everywhere. I think, you mentioned Sung Jae Im as well. I think with the miscut last week, you might get him at a little bit lower ownership percentage than what you would normally get him at. And then I have one more that's been putting unbelievable, and he's kind of turned back the clock a little bit, and his price is just way too cheap on DraftKings, and that's Jimmy Walker. He's 6,500 on DraftKings, and that's just too cheap in a non-elevated event for a guy that has found some form this year on a golf course where he doesn't have to overpower it, and he's literally been filling it up. And I just think, like I said, if you're going to try to build in a Scheffler, a Hovland, some of the Finau, some of those guys up top in your lineup, I just think that if you can find somebody like that provides value. I mean, I think he's got 4 or 5 top 25s this year on similar courses. I know he played good for a while at the RBC. I just, like I said, when I was just going through looking at the prices for pure value purposes, that one really stood out to me.
He had 4 top 25s in a row between the Valero Texas Open and the Wells Fargo, gaining about, let's say, between 1.5 and 2 true strokes per round in that time frame. So yeah, he was really playing well. It was iron play, around the green play, and putting, by the way. So the only aspect where he's not a great fit is that he's longer than he is accurate off the tee. But approach play, short game, and putting, he checks every box. So I think you're onto something there. My next one, and perhaps my favorite bet of the year, other than futures, when I talk about my favorite bet, Keith Mitchell, 250-1 each way for the Masters, we've got to throw that one out the window. It didn't come to fruition, but it's going to be really hard to ever beat that number and that expected value on a PGA outright. But Eric Cole, 100-1 each way, is certainly up there for me. Another guy who has had a lot of success on golf courses that, number one, he should have success on given his fit, but now he's coming to a course where he is a perfect fit. And the one aspect, it's not just that he's been outstanding with his irons around the green and putting, it's also long-term, his big weakness is driving. He's been inaccurate and not very long. But something's changing here. He has now gained off the tee in 6 of his last 8 events, 5 of his last 6, and he's gained in both kind of atmospheres, if you will. He's gained at the Byron Nelson, at the Valero Texas Open, at the Players, where distance isn't quite as important as it just was at the PGA Championship. He's still gained off the tee at the PGA Championship. He's doing a phenomenal job, I think, of managing his misses. Like if you look at his percentage of fairways hit, there's nothing spectacular about it. He's not gaining really at all distance-wise, and yet he's consistently gaining off the tee because he's managing his misses. He's making sure that he's putting himself in a position to take advantage of his great skill set throughout the rest of his bag. He's been unbelievable around the greens. He's been consistently awesome with his irons. And then the putting has been like it's either not there or it spikes, and he's one of the best putters in the field. So I like that putting inconsistency in the sense that the rest of his game should be there. And if you get that putting spike, he's in contention. So I really like him this week. He's coming off 2 great finishes at the Byron Nelson and then a top 15 at the PGA Championship. I just think he has no business being 100 to 1. Like I think a fair price for him would be 40 to 50. I'm getting double that with positional points. It's just a really, really great bet.
Yeah, no, I like him a lot. It's funny. A buddy of mine texted me when he was playing good in the first round, and he was like, "Hey, Eric Cole's at it again." I was like, "Don't worry. He only makes a living in non-elevated events. He won't. He can't win this week." So
that was good. I thought too.
Yeah, he's definitely a conversational piece for sure. But no, I mean, we get in non-elevated events where he fits the mold. I wouldn't see. I think after that finish last week, as long as he's not worn out. I was talking about that with a few guys, right? Somebody put something about Carson Young. He won sectionals here in Dallas, walking 36 holes, but and getting through. Austin Eckroat was in there. I think he got through. How many of those guys, 36 holes on a Monday and then have to play Thursday are, especially the ones that qualified, are mentally and physically fatigued, and how long does it take for that to go away?
I think that's a quality point, and it's worth considering. I will say for him, I don't think it's much of an issue. A couple reasons. He's now played, this will be his 7th consecutive week playing, but 3 of those weeks were missed cuts, including the Partners event that there wasn't much mental stress anyway. He went out of his way to go play the Korn Ferry Tour event as the first event in this streak. So if he's going out of his way to play a Korn Ferry Tour event, you kind of know he wants to be playing a lot of golf. He feels really good about his game. He wants to kind of build on this new high that he's reached. And since then, he's kind of elevated his game yet again. Top 5 Mexico, then top 23 at the Byron Nelson, and now a top 15 at the PGA Championship. Like I think where he's at mentally is as excited as he's been about golf, loving where his game is taking him. It's not like he just had a top 5 finish or was in contention at the PGA Championship. He just played really well. So I think he's in a spot where he's riding this wave of momentum, and his mental energy is 100% there, and maybe as high as it's been all year.
Yeah, and that's something that I don't, like I said, I have no idea. I hope you're right, but there's definitely that, hey, like after that top 15 at the PGA, like I've made it now, right? I'm here for the long haul. I can relax a little bit more.
I would feel a lot more concerned if he was like in contention going into Sunday and, played 4 over and dropped to tie for 15th. That's when I think you would be really worried about mental fatigue. The way he did it, I think, he was never even remotely in contention. He wasn't really feeling that type of pressure. I just think he's in a really, really good place with his game and mentally.
Well, I mean, he slept on the lead the first day. He had to come back and finish his first round and got off to a horrible start. I think he made double on his first hole back and then still hung around to finish in the top 15. So you could be right for sure. I mean, it was pretty impressive. It would have been pretty easy to mail it in at that point, and he didn't.
Going through some of the rest of this field, are there guys that you're looking towards? I don't know if you've really looked through pricing yet on DraftKings, but do you kind of have a core taking shape of any kind on DraftKings?
I mean, I love the idea of a bunch of Fleetwood, as I said before. I think I'm going to play a bunch of Jimmy Walker. Well, a bunch when I say probably 2 of my 3 lineups are going to have those 2 in. Like I said, I just think the value is too much. I really want to play Hovland is what I really think. I think it's and it goes against everything that I usually believe and think, right? You're in contention, don't get the job done. But I just think he's such a different character. He's a different person. He's not I think the course for him just seems like it should fit. So, but as far as a pure core, I mean, I looked at Bezuidenhout too a lot. So there's some guys right in that middle range that I'm going to try to build around. But I think Fleetwood's going to be the main one with some Jimmy Walker to go with it. And then, I'll kind of pick my last 3 or 4, as the week progresses. I love the Colin Henley, he'll be involved. There's just, I think it's one of those deals that you just also have to make sure we don't get any rain to make sure it doesn't. I think I'm going to go out there Wednesday, so I'll be able to see what the rough's like and that kind of deal.
Yeah, give us all that information. I want to hear how firm the greens are, how firm the fairways are, just in case it's going to play different from years past, which has the potential to change the course fit model. But I feel really confident going into this week. I think it sets up really well for us. Hopefully we can duplicate the success of 2 weeks ago at TPC Craig Ranch. I think my core is going to be Henley Cole. I don't think there's any reason to deviate from that pairing, even though I have the outrights on them. Sungjae is going to be close to core. I think it's really going to depend on what his ownership is. The most interesting thing about Sungjae is historically he's been one of the lowest volatility players. His volatility of late has kind of shot through the roof. And again, that works in both directions. It gives him a really great ceiling, but it also means that if he's really chalky, maybe he's a little bit too fragile for my liking. So it's to be seen on him. I think Taylor Moore has a chance to be in my core, probably to no one's surprise, at just $8,000. I just think he's too good for that price, probably $1,000 too cheap in this field. I love his game. I'd also say I'm not that concerned about the poor weekend for him. I think it's one of those situations where you get some mental fatigue on a golf course. It's that difficult. And as soon as you're just off a little bit,
checked out.
Yeah, just you check out. And then as soon as you check out on a golf course like that, you've got no chance. So I think it's worth noting too, by the way, he had a similar round 4 at the Masters, not to the same degree, but came right back with a T11 at the Heritage. So I think not only do I just believe in his game and his talent and his fit for this golf course, but we also have this immediate piece of evidence that he can rebound to a really bad weekend at the majors, a disappointing weekend at a major, and play really well the next week.
Well, he's a local kid too. He lives here. So I'm sure he's been over there to play a few times. Mm-hmm. I was surprised to see his attitude throwing the driver and stuff on Saturday and all that. They kind of made a big deal about. And then to not play good again on Sunday kind of worries me just for that. But I mean, there's definitely the possibility he was just done. And you could see that in, the bottom 8, 10, 12 guys where they're just get me out of this place. Why did I even make the cut? I'd have rather been at 6 over and missed the cut by 1, right? I mean, you could just see it. So,
and Saturday, especially, the weather was so miserable that if you weren't playing well, if you weren't in contention, you weren't having fun, period.
Yeah. I mean, if you're 9 back and it's dumping on you on that golf course and you're I can't, what am I going to do? And
you're not swinging well.
Yeah. So it's I mean, we'll see how he comes back this week. I definitely when I was scrolling through the list, he definitely caught my attention because you're right, it should be a good golf course for him. It should fit the way he plays, and like I said, I know he's been out there to play. So I like Taylor Moore a lot. I think that he could definitely be some competitive this week. There's some interesting guys in this field that are kind of we're trying to really figure out who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think he's one of them, right? Obviously, he played really good lately, but is this going to be a long-term, he's going to stay as a 9,000 and up DFS guy, or is he going to kind of win here and then kind of waver in between I don't know. We'll see. I was glad to see him make the cut last week. I was disappointed in his weekend performance. We have to talk about Justin Rose a little bit, I think. I think he at least deserves to be talked about.
It's funny you mentioned that because the next two guys that I was going to ask you about are Justin Rose coming off that performance and Sam Burns. So let's start with Rose. What was your biggest takeaway from him finding his way into contention and then not playing terribly Sunday, but certainly not playing as well as he would have liked?
Well, I think that the thing that goes overlooked is he's another one that's found form this year, especially of late. I mean, top 10 at the Players, top 10 at somewhere else, RBC maybe, and a bunch of top 25s in there as well. So, like, I wasn't really surprised. I think it was more just affirmation that, like, okay, maybe he is healthy. Maybe he does have it together. Maybe he is, kind of going back to that form that he had for a while. I'm encouraged by it. I think he's going to have a great year, continue to have a great year. He's already had a great year. I think he's going to continue to have a great year. And I mean, the one lineup that I've made in that, well, they added $22 to it. Now it's 222 single, but he's in that lineup as of right this second.
What makes him intriguing to me is the fact that putting is as predictive here as it is basically on any golf course on tour. And he's certainly in the conversation for best putter in the world. I've got him at a baseline 0.5 strokes gained putting per round. Ironically, like there are basically only two guys that I would say in this field are decisively better, Denny McCarthy and Sam Burns on the greens. So certainly Rose coming off that type of performance. I would have liked to have seen him drive the ball a little bit better at the PGA Championship. I think that's like if there is a hole in his game, it is still the driver. So with accuracy being as predictive as it is this week, I'd like to see that a little bit better. And at his price, that may be what holds me back from playing him. But this could change with ownership, right? Like if Sungjae is 25% and Justin Rose is 5 to 10, that's when I would really want to take a chance on Rose. Let's pivot to Sam Burns, the defending champ. He's driven the ball much more accurately this year than basically at any other point in his career, specifically over the last month or two, coming off a terrible, terrible PGA Championship. But the iron play is good. The around the green game seems to be improving. The accuracy off the tee definitely improving. And we know that he is as good as anybody in the entire world on the greens. So are we going to see him find himself in contention again?
I mean, I don't think it would surprise anybody. Would it really? I mean, like it just fits him. We know he can win here. We know he putts good. I think it's another one of those deals that we've talked about so many times that his volatility is so high that he could go win or he could go miss a cut. And I don't think either one would be like, oh, that's impossible. You can't do that. Like, that's just the way he is. So, like, I'm not an ownership guy, that, but I believe this is one of those guys that, like, and I think we've had this conversation before where if he's low owned, you have to have a piece of him. And if he's really high owned, I don't have any problem fading him.
Yeah, I think I'm in complete agreement. What do you think of 28 to 1 for him?
If he's in contention, that's a way too high of a number. But once again, you could have dead money after 9 holes on Thursday. I think you have too much value with your other two that I don't know that you would want to cut your value there. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but there's got to be a point where how many outrights is enough outrights and feeling like you have an edge where you're at. What's Fleetwood? What do you have Fleetwood at?
Let's see.
Because that seems like those two should be around the same number to me.
So Fleetwood is 35 to 1 at Caesars, 33 at PointsBet and FanDuel. So it sounds like you'd be on the Fleetwood train instead of Burns.
I think I would lean to Fleetwood over Burns here this week, just the way that they're trending right now. But again, Burns has no problem making me look like an idiot. I mean, he's done it before, and he can win at places like this. And it's the right type of golf course. It's the right crowd. It's the right environment, if that makes sense, for him to play well.
So I have Fleetwood's median outcome slightly better than Burns, but I have Burns with about a 2.5 times more likely outcome of a win. And that's just because like that's what he does. He wins tournaments, as you said. Like he doesn't have a whole lot of middle ground where he's not finishing top 10 very often without being like literally in contention and even closing out the wins. And then he has a lot of missed cuts. I certainly think he's far more likely to miss this cut than Fleetwood. I also think he's far more likely to win than Fleetwood. I think the most interesting thing for Burns, and maybe the way I'll play this, is because of how volatile he is, he kind of gives you the answer early on. And so the way I think I'll play this is I'm probably not going to place a pre-tournament 28-1 bet on him. But as the tournament starts, I want to see, number one, that he's driving the ball accurately. And then number two, I want to see that he has his iron play. So if in the first, like, let's say 6 holes, he's hitting the ball well, but he hasn't made many birdie putts yet. And so his odds are either right where they are, or maybe they fall into 40 to 50, something like that, if someone else has started hot. That's, I think, when I want to make that bet. I've seen that, all right, he's got the ball striking. It's only a matter of time before he starts making putts. Because if the ball striking's there and he hasn't made some putts yet, it's only a matter of time before he makes, 3 10-footers in a row. Suddenly he's right next to the leader, and you just got a fantastic number on him. I think that's the way I'll play him, and just hope he kind of has that slow start that's accompanied by good ball striking.
Yeah, the other thing, the reason that I kind of I don't want to say shy away, but the reason I like a value on like a Cole or a Henley better is because everybody's going to reach number 1, the par 5, and then nobody is going to reach 11. Well, unless it's somehow the wind's different, but generally speaking, like maybe 5 guys in the whole field might hit it on 11 and 2. So you're not looking at, it's either everybody's getting there or a very, very select few are. So it's not like he can go overpower some of those holes like I would like to see out of him. But, I mean, he proved he can win here. So if he gets the putter going, these greens are always so good. And I think they're tearing this place up after this year, after next year.
I love, by the way, that you kind of just vocalized the exact rationale for why distance isn't predictive here. Because you don't have those holes where being long gives you an opportunity that the shorter hitters don't have. You're playing holes that either everyone's getting to or no one's getting to, that sort of thing. So as you like to always say, 2 very different paths to the same outcome that we have. I love that you just like perfectly verbalized exactly why distance is not predictive here. I'm not even sure you knew that you were doing that.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it's just one of those deals. Like, and that's what I was saying earlier about the distance matter. It's like 3 or 4 high leverage tee shots where you can, if you can fly it in the mid to high 80s, 90s range, you can go from, a sand wedge to an 8 or 9 iron. So outside, I mean, and the expected birdie rate's so much higher the closer you get to the green. So that was really the only main difference. Is there are, for as little as distance matters, there are still 3 or 4 high leverage shots. Number 3 is a big one. You can kind of hit it over the corner around a fairway bunker on the left instead of having, 6 or 7 iron or even 5 iron if you hit out to the right, 12 or 13, somewhere back in that corner. So there's a couple that like just you can take a hole where some guys are like, hey, I just need to hit it out here, make a par and go on, where they're like, hey, I'm going to go try to make a birdie again like every other hole out there. So I think that's where I think the overlook on distance comes from. But, yeah, as far as being able to reach the par 5s, there's only 2 of them, and one of them everybody's reaching.
Speaking of making birdies, some pretty exciting news. I believe that this week, before this event starts, we will have our crowd favorite birdie rate over expectation metric back in action. If it's not this week, it will be early next week, but I think that we're going to have it this week. So very excited about that. I want to give a shout out to new subscriber I'm going to say other guy. I know that's not how he pronounces his username. It's actually his last name, but easiest way to reference him. He backed up that $6,000 win in PGA last week with a $5,000 MLB takedown. So quite an entrance to the FTN community for him. Shout out to you. And also a great way to say, hey, get a platinum subscription for yourself, because we've been having a lot of fun here at FTN, whether it's Prize Picks, DFS, betting, whatever the case is. So use promo code PRO for 20% off. Join us and let's have a ton of fun. And Justin, thank you once again for joining me, and let's have ourselves a great week. It's been a lot of fun. Let's keep it rolling.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks everyone. Guys. Catch you next time.